He opened the wrong door, saw her bathing, and that moment changed her life forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The sound of running water echoed softly through the narrow apartment. Steam curled against the cracked tiles as Evelyn Monroe rinsed soap from her arms, humming a tune she barely remembered. It was late past 10, and the rain outside drummed against the thin window like fingertips keeping time with her heart. The bathroom light flickered, the kind of cheap bulb that buzzed when the water heater kicked in. Across the hallway, footsteps approached quick, heavy, confident. The door handle rattled once, then turned. Evelyn's breath caught. The door swung open. A man froze in the doorway, drenched from the rain, holding a phone and a keycard. His eyes widened in shock as if he had stepped into the wrong universe. For a full heartbeat, neither of them moved. The only sound was the soft hiss of water and Evelyn's sharp gasp. "Oh my God!" she cried, clutching the towel to her chest. I am so sorry," the man stammered, backing away instantly. His voice was deep, controlled, but edged with panic. "I swear I thought this was my friend's apartment." He slammed the door shut. Silence. Then the hurried footsteps faded down the hall. Evelyn stood there trembling, heart racing, steam swirling around her like fog. Her mind tried to catch up with what had just happened. Who was that man? Why did he look so familiar? When she finally dared to peek outside minutes later, the hallway was empty except for one thing. A dark gray jacket lay draped over her doormat. Expensive, tailored, still warm. She picked it up carefully, her fingers brushing against the label stitched inside. L. Gray. The name meant nothing to her, yet something about the weight of that coat, the faint scent of rain and cologne, felt strangely human, like the trace of a story not yet told. She folded it neatly over a chair, telling herself she would return it tomorrow. But that night, as she sat by the small window sketching the city skyline, her pencil traced not the lights or the rooftops, but the outline of a man's silhouette framed by a half-open door and a rush of steam. Across town, Liam Gray sat in his car, soaked to the bone, pressing his palms to the steering wheel. He had never felt this foolish in his life. One wrong door in the maze of identical hallways at his friend's old apartment complex, and he had walked straight into someone's bathroom. Into her bathroom, he leaned back in the seat, exhaling, trying to shake the image of wide, frightened eyes and dripping hair. He should have apologized properly. He should have stayed and explained. But all he could think about was the stunned disbelief on her face, and the fact that, for the first time in years, he had completely lost control of a situation. Outside, thunder rolled through the city. Liam turned the heater up, his mind replaying that one impossible moment. Somewhere between the shock and the embarrassment, something else lingered, an unfamiliar ache. He did not know her name. He only knew that tomorrow, somehow, he would have to make things right. And Evelyn, still staring at the jacket across the room, whispered to herself, "Who are you, L. Gray?" Neither of them could guess that a single mistake, a door opened too soon, had just changed both of their lives forever. Morning came gray and heavy with rain. Evelyn woke to the patter of drops against the window and the faint chill that crept under her thin blanket. The jacket still hung over the chair, dry now but carrying the faintest scent of cedar and rain. For a moment she just stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or hide it forever. She had to get to work. The small cafe 2 blocks away paid barely enough to cover rent, but it kept her afloat. Evelyn pulled on her worn sneakers and slung her sketchbook into her bag, the corner of one page folded where she had drawn the man from last night. She tried to shake off the memory as she stepped into the drizzle. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly when she walked in. The morning rush had not started yet, just the smell of roasted beans and the hum of an old espresso machine. She tied on her apron, forcing a smile for her coworker. Around 9 o'clock, the door opened again, and the sound of rain gave way to the low murmur of conversation. Evelyn looked up and froze. He was there, the man from the hallway, the wrong door. He looked different in daylight, tall, clean-cut, wearing a dark suit and a look of quiet confidence. He scanned the menu as if nothing in the world could surprise him. But when their eyes met, recognition flashed across his face. Evelyn's pulse spiked. She almost dropped the coffee pot. For a second, she considered pretending not to notice him, to hide behind the counter and let him leave. But then she remembered the jacket. She wiped her hands on a towel, took a deep breath, and walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said softly. "You left this." She held up the neatly folded jacket. He blinked, clearly startled, then gave a small, awkward smile. "I owe you a massive apology," he said. "I was visiting a friend in the building. I walked into the wrong unit. I am truly sorry for scaring you." Evelyn managed a nervous laugh. "You definitely succeeded at that." He looked genuinely remorseful. "I will make it up to you. Coffee on me?" She hesitated. "I work here." "Then maybe after your shift," he said, his tone warm but careful. "If you will let me explain without sounding like a criminal." She studied him for a moment. There was something disarming in his calmness, something unpolished beneath the expensive suit. "All right," she said finally, "but only if you promise not to walk into any more apartments first." He chuckled. "Deal." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Evelyn tried to focus on refilling cups and wiping tables, but her mind kept drifting to the stranger who had turned her embarrassment into curiosity. When her shift ended, he was still there, sitting by the window with a half-empty cup and a quiet patience that felt unusual for someone who looked like he belonged in a boardroom. They talked about simple things at first: music, weather, and the city, but the conversation began to flow with an ease that surprised them both. She learned his name, Liam Gray, a software consultant, or so he said. He asked about her art, her job, her favorite places to draw. No one had asked her those questions in a long time. When she laughed, the tiredness in her eyes faded. When he smiled, it was not the practiced grin of a man used to attention, but something honest, even shy. By the time they stepped outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the street gleaming under the sunset. He held the door for her, and for a fleeting moment, the world seemed softer, almost rewritten. Neither of them said goodbye right away. Evelyn simply smiled and said, "Maybe I will see you again." Liam nodded, his eyes catching the fading light. "You will," he said quietly. As she walked home, she did not know if it was a promise or a hope. But for the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt the weight of her small world shift just a little towards something that might finally change. The next few days moved quietly but differently. Evelyn found herself smiling for no reason while steaming milk or sketching on her breaks. Each morning, she half expected Liam to walk into the cafe again, and when he finally did, it felt less like surprise and more like something inevitable. He ordered the same thing every time: black coffee, no sugar, and sat by the window near her station. Sometimes he worked on his laptop. Other times he simply watched the rain or the passing cars. They began to talk in small bursts between customers. He asked about her drawings, and one afternoon, she shyly showed him a few pages from her sketchbook. He studied them carefully, turning each page like it mattered. "You see light the way other people see possibilities," he said, his tone gentle. Evelyn laughed, embarrassed. "That is a fancy way to say I cannot afford photography equipment," he smiled. "Or a modest way to hide talent." Every conversation peeled back another layer of her world. She told him about juggling 3 jobs to stay afloat, about her father who taught her to draw with a pencil stub, and her dream to one day open a tiny art studio that doubled as a coffee corner. Liam listened, never interrupting, his expression softening each time she spoke about her hopes, as if he were memorizing them. When she asked about his work, he only said he did something in tech, helping companies solve problems. It sounded vague, but she did not press. To her, he was simply Liam, the quiet man who once opened the wrong door and somehow walked into her days. One chilly evening, he dropped by near closing time and offered to walk her home. The city lights shimmered on puddles as they moved down the narrow streets, their steps falling into rhythm. Evelyn carried her sketchbook under her arm. Liam held an umbrella slightly tilted toward her side. "So what do you draw when you are not working?" he asked. "People," she said. "Not perfect ones. People who look like they are still figuring things out." He smiled. "Then I guess you should draw me sometime." "I might," she replied, glancing up at him. "If you promise to stay still." He chuckled, the sound low and genuine. When they reached her building, she turned to him, unsure how to end the night. "Thank you," she said, "for not making that whole bathroom thing weird." He met her eyes. "I am the one who should thank you for not reporting me to building security." She laughed softly. "Consider us even." As she stepped inside, he called after her, "Evelyn?" She paused in the doorway. "Yes?" "Keep drawing," he said. "One day someone is going to see what you see." Duning haven't one planer downess. The words stayed with her long after the door closed. That night, under the faint hum of her desk lamp, she opened her sketchbook and began a new page. The pencil moved on its own, tracing the outline of a man holding an umbrella, the glow of city lights spilling across his face. Beneath it, she wrote two simple words: "Thank you." Across town, in a glass-walled office overlooking the skyline, Liam Gray sat behind a mahogany desk, the city's reflection rippling over his window. The monitor displayed graphs, contracts, and endless messages from his company's board. But his attention drifted. On the corner of his desk sat a napkin from the cafe, marked with a small doodle of a steaming cup and a handwritten note. "Good luck with your meeting." He stared at it for a long time. For years, success had been a noise that drowned everything else. Now a stranger's kindness had brought silence, a rare kind, the kind that made him listen. Liam leaned back, thinking of her laugh, her honesty, the way she never asked what he was worth. For the first time, the man who owned half of downtown Skyline felt like he finally belonged somewhere smaller, warmer, somewhere real. The following weekend, the cafe buzzed with its usual morning crowd. Evelyn balanced trays and coffee cups with practiced ease, her ponytail swaying as she moved from table to table. It had been nearly a week since she last saw Liam, and though she tried not to admit it to herself, she missed the quiet way he listened, the calm that seemed to follow him wherever he went. By noon, she was wiping down a counter when a shadow fell across it. "Still serving the best coffee in town?" The familiar voice made her look up instantly. Liam stood there, dressed casually, this time jeans, a navy jacket, and the same easy smile that had started to feel like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You came back," she said, surprised. "I promised, did I not?" he replied. "Besides, I still owed you that proper coffee." Evelyn laughed and handed him a cup. "On the house, then?" He took a sip, pretending to consider it. "Still terrible," he said with a straight face. She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" His grin widened. "I am kidding. It is perfect." They talked again, this time longer, until her break ended. He waited patiently, reading on his phone while she worked. When her shift was finally over, he offered to walk her out. The spring air was cool, scented with rain from the night before. "I have been thinking," he began as they turned down the street. "You mentioned you like to draw outdoors. Have you ever tried sketching at Riverside Park? The light there is different, cleaner." Evelyn glanced at him, amused. "That sounds suspiciously like an invitation." "Maybe it is," he said. "Tomorrow? I will bring coffee that does not come from your cafe." She pretended to think. "Only if you promise not to judge my drawings." "Never," he said softly. The next morning, they met under the old willow by the park's fountain. The air smelled of fresh grass and the distant sweetness of a food cart nearby. Evelyn spread her sketchbook on her lap while Liam sat beside her, handing her a paper cup. For a while, neither of them spoke. She drew in quiet concentration, her pencil moving in steady strokes. He watched the reflection of sunlight on the water, stealing occasional glances at her face, the way her brow furrowed when she focused, the faint smudge of graphite on her fingertips. When she finally paused, he leaned over. "Can I see?" She hesitated, then turned the page toward him. It was a sketch of the park, yes, but also of him, sitting exactly where he was now, his posture relaxed, his expression thoughtful. She blushed as she realized how personal it looked. "I did not mean to," she began. "It is beautiful," he interrupted, his voice low. "You made me look calmer than I actually am." "You seem calm to me," she said. He looked at her, the edges of his smile softening. "That is because you are here." For a moment, everything went still. The city noises seemed far away. Even the fountain's steady rush faded into the background. Evelyn felt her heartbeat quicken, but she did not look away. They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering through the park, talking about nothing and everything. She told him stories about customers at the cafe. He listened as if each one mattered. When she spoke of her dream to host her own art show someday, he asked quiet questions: what she would call it, what she would paint first. By sunset, the sky burned gold over the river. They stood on the bridge, watching the light shimmer across the water. Evelyn hugged her sketchbook to her chest. "It is getting late," she said softly. "I will walk you home," he replied. And when they reached her building, he paused at the door, searching for words. Evelyn, he said, sometimes life opens the wrong doors for the right reasons. She smiled, recognizing the echo. Then I guess I should thank you for that mistake. These rallied. As he left, she watched him disappear into the fading light, her heart carrying a warmth she had not felt in years without knowing that soon, the truth about who he really was would test everything she believed about love and honesty. Days turned into weeks, and what began as an accidental friendship slowly became a quiet routine neither of them wanted to break. Every few days, Liam would stop by the cafe, sometimes ordering coffee, sometimes pretending he just happened to be nearby. Evelyn never questioned it. She only knew that his presence made the long hours lighter and the silence between customers less lonely. One Sunday morning, he arrived earlier than usual and waited by the window with 2 cups of coffee. When she approached, he slid one toward her. You never get to sit down here, he said. So today I am stealing you for breakfast. She laughed softly. You realize that means I will get fired if my boss walks in. Then we will make it quick, he said. 10 minutes of rebellion. Those 10 minutes stretched into an hour. They talked about books, art, and the strangest jobs they had ever had. Liam shared half a bagel with her, insisting it tasted better that way. When she mentioned how she wished she could take a class in real painting someday, he asked quietly, What is stopping you? Evelyn shrugged. Rent, bills, life. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Maybe one day you will not have to choose between surviving and creating. She smiled at that, thinking it was just a kind thing to say, unaware how literally he meant it. A few evenings later, he invited her to a small local art show. Nothing fancy, he promised. Just something I think you would like. Evelyn hesitated. She had never been to an event like that, but his easy tone calmed her. She wore her best second-hand dress, a simple blue one that matched the quiet confidence she was starting to feel again. The gallery was modest but bright, filled with the soft hum of music and conversation. Liam stayed close beside her, introducing her to a few artists and collectors he claimed were friends from work. Evelyn could not help noticing how they greeted him with unexpected respect, as though he were more than just a consultant. But when she asked, he brushed it off with a smile. They wandered through the exhibits until she stopped in front of a painting of a rain-soaked city street light spilling across the wet pavement, reflections like moving glass. That one feels alive, she whispered. Liam watched her expression more than the artwork. Maybe because you see what others do not. It's don't. Later, as they stood by the refreshments table, a woman in a sleek black dress approached. Liam, she said with polished familiarity. The partners are waiting for your thoughts on the expansion proposal. Evelyn turned to him, confused. Partners? He cleared his throat. Work stuff. I will be right back. He left with the woman, her diamond earrings catching the light. Evelyn waited, pretending to study a sculpture, but her mind spun. Partners. Expansion. The words did not fit the man she knew, the one who joked about coffee and carried umbrellas. When he returned, his smile was the same, but something in her eyes had changed. On the way home, she walked quietly beside him. He asked if she enjoyed the evening, and she said yes, though the word felt fragile. Before saying goodnight, he reached into his pocket and handed her a small folded paper. What is this? She asked. An invitation, he said. There is a charity event next week bigger than this one, but I think you should see it. Bring your sketchbook. She frowned playfully. Do they allow waitresses at charity galas? They allow artists, he said simply. After he left, Evelyn unfolded the paper under the streetlight. It was printed on thick ivory cardstock with elegant lettering, Graytech Foundation Annual Gala. Her eyes stopped at one name near the top, Chairman and CEO, Liam Gray. The wind stirred around her, scattering a few drops of rain from the awning above. She stood frozen, the truth sinking slowly, heavily. The man who had once walked through her bathroom door was not just some quiet consultant. He was a millionaire. And suddenly, every moment between them, the laughter, the walks, the promises, felt like a story she had been told without knowing she was in it. The night of the gala arrived sooner than Evelyn expected. She had spent the past week torn between disbelief and a quiet ache she could not name. The invitation sat on her nightstand like a secret staring back at her. Every time she read his name printed beneath the golden logo, it felt like another layer of the world had shifted. Still, she went. She told herself it was only curiosity, that she needed to see for herself who he truly was. She borrowed a simple black dress from her coworker and tied her hair into a loose bun. It was not glamour that she wore that night, it was courage. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above tables draped in white linen, and a live orchestra filled the air with music that felt like sunlight on glass. Every guest moved with the kind of ease that came from never worrying about rent or late fees. Evelyn tried to steady her breathing as she stepped inside, clutching her small sketchbook like an anchor. Then she saw him. Liam stood near the stage, shaking hands with donors and board members, his posture calm and assured. He looked every bit the man the world expected him to be: confident, composed, and impossibly out of reach. When his eyes found hers across the room, the confident smile faltered just slightly. He excused himself and walked toward her, each step measured, deliberate. "You came," he said softly. "I did," she replied. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. It seemed rude to ignore a personal invitation from the CEO himself. He winced. "Evelyn, I was going to tell you." "When?" she asked, keeping her gaze on the glittering floor. "Before or after I served you another cup of coffee?" "It was never about that," he said quickly. "I wanted to know you without all of this." He gestured around them, the chandeliers, the polished guests, the quiet hum of wealth. "I wanted to be seen as a person, not a name. And I was the experiment?" Her tone was sharp, but the hurt in her eyes was deeper than anger. "You lied to me, Liam. You let me believe we were equals." "I did not lie," he said quietly. "I just did not correct the truth." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "That sounds worse." Before he could answer, the host's voice rose over the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our founder and guest of honor, Mr. Liam Gray." Applause thundered across the room. Liam stood frozen for a heartbeat, caught between two worlds, the one that applauded him and the one that was walking away. "Go," Evelyn said, her voice trembling but firm. "They are waiting for you, everyone." He looked at her one last time, regret clouding his expression, then turned toward the stage. The spotlight followed him as he began his speech, words about innovation, generosity, and future vision. But his eyes kept drifting toward the back of the room, where she had been standing. When the speech ended, she was gone. Outside, the night air felt sharp against her skin. She walked quickly down the marble steps, her heels echoing like a heartbeat she could not quiet. Around her, the city glittered, indifferent and endless. She had walked into that ballroom, believing she would find answers, but all she found was the reminder of how far apart their worlds truly were. Back inside, Liam stood alone by the tall windows after the crowd had thinned. He loosened his tie and stared at the reflection of the city below. The applause still rang faintly in his ears, but it meant nothing. Somewhere out there, the only person who had seen him as more than his fortune was walking away. And for the first time in his carefully built life, Liam Gray felt the weight of what money could never buy: the right to be forgiven by someone who once saw him simply as human. The morning after the gala, Evelyn woke to a silence that felt heavier than usual. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, brushing across her sketchbook on the bedside table. The last page, she had drawn a portrait of Liam laughing under an umbrella, now looked like a memory that did not belong to her anymore. Her phone buzzed. Messages, missed calls, all from him. She stared at the screen for a long time before turning it face down. She could not bring herself to delete his number, but she also could not answer. What could he possibly say that would make any of it feel real again? At the cafe, she moved through the day in a fog. The sound of the coffee grinder, the chatter of customers, even the familiar scent of roasted beans, everything felt distant. Her coworker, noticing her silence, asked if she was all right. Evelyn only smiled weakly and said she was fine, but she was not. That night, after closing, she walked home in the drizzle. Her reflection followed her in the puddles, small, tired, and unsure of what to believe. When she reached her apartment, something was waiting at her door. A plain envelope, sealed neatly with her name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a note. "Evelyn, I know I hurt you, and I cannot change that. You deserve honesty, and I should have trusted you with the truth from the start. I never meant to deceive you. I only wanted to be someone real in your eyes before the rest of the world came between us again. If you can find it in your heart to listen, I will be at the place where everything began. Liam." She folded the note slowly, her heart pounding. Where everything began. The words echoed in her mind: the apartment building, the wrong door, the rain. Evelyn hesitated. but curiosity and something softer pulled her back there. By the time she reached the old hallway, the night had deepened, and the rain had turned into a steady curtain outside. He was there, standing by the door that had once separated them, the same door he had opened by mistake. His jacket was soaked again, his hair damp, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "I was not sure you would come," he said quietly. "I was not sure either," she replied. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence. "I did not lie to you to protect myself," Liam said, his voice low, honest. "I did it because I wanted to know who I was without the name, the company, the headlines. And then I met you, and suddenly, being Liam Gray, CEO, felt smaller than being the man who spilled coffee with you at the park." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You made me believe in something ordinary, and then you turned it into something I could never reach." He took a careful step closer. "You reached it, Evelyn. You just do not see it yet." She shook her head, her eyes glistening. "I do not belong in your world." "Then let me come into yours," he said. "No boardrooms, no headlines, just us. Let me prove that what I feel does not need a title." For a long heartbeat, she looked at him, this man who had everything yet seemed to carry the same kind of emptiness she knew too well. She wanted to believe him, but the fear of being broken again held her still. Finally, she whispered, "I need time. And 25. He nodded slowly, understanding. "Then I will wait." As she turned to leave, she looked back once more. Liam stood where she had first seen him months ago under the dim hallway light, with rain dripping from his coat and hope written across his face. Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She did not know what came next, but for the first time since the gala, the ache in her chest felt less like heartbreak and more like the quiet beginning of forgiveness. 2 weeks passed. The city moved through late autumn, trading its warmth for crisp winds and skies brushed with gray. Evelyn threw herself into work and painting, trying to fill the spaces Liam had left behind. Yet no matter how many sketches she finished, there was always one image she could not complete: the expression on his face that night in the hallway when she walked away. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived at the cafe addressed to her. The envelope bore no logo this time, just her name, written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single card, an invitation printed in deep gold ink. "The Art of Evelyn Monroe, a private exhibit, curated by L. Gray." Her heart stopped. Beneath it was a small note. "Come if you can. No speeches, no cameras, just your work, the way it was meant to be seen." She read it again and again, unsure if it was real. No one had ever given her something like this, let alone someone like him. Still, that night, as she stood before the mirror, she decided to go, not for him, but for herself. The gallery was softly lit, nothing grand or ostentatious, just warm lights gliding across white walls. Her sketches hung carefully in rows, every piece she had ever drawn, from street corners to quiet cafes. Someone had framed each one with reverence. Evelyn walked slowly through the space, her breath trembling. On one wall, she saw it, the very first drawing she had made of Liam, the silhouette in the doorway, the night everything began. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "The wrong door, the right beginning." A voice behind her said quietly, "It felt fitting." She turned. Liam stood near the doorway, wearing no suit this time, just a dark sweater and the same warmth she remembered from their earliest days. "You did all this?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Your work deserved to be seen. You make people stop and feel something they forgot existed. I just wanted to give that gift back to you." Her eyes glistened. "You could have just called." "I tried," he said with a faint smile, "but some apologies need walls and light." She laughed, the sound breaking the tension between them. "You are impossible." "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. "But I am honest this time. No disguises, no half-truths." He took a small folded paper from his pocket, a check made out in her name, with a note attached. "For your studio. Your dream deserves a roof." She stared at it, stunned. "Liam, I cannot take this." "You are not taking it," he said gently. "You earned it. You changed something in me, Evelyn. You reminded me that wealth without purpose is just noise." For a long moment, the only sound in the gallery was the hum of the lights above them. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. "You did hurt me, and I do not know if I am ready to forgive all of it, but I see what you are trying to do, and maybe that matters more than the past." He nodded, his expression soft. "That is all I ever wanted, a chance to make things right." Evelyn looked around the gallery once more. Her sketches, once hidden under her bed, now surrounded her like echoes of every version of herself she had been. She felt something inside her shift, a quiet sense of peace. She handed the check back to him. "Keep it. If you really want to help me, then let this be ours, not yours." He smiled slowly, deeply. "Then it is ours." Outside, the city lights flickered against the gallery window, reflecting the two of them standing side by side among her art. For the first time since their lives collided, Evelyn felt that maybe fate had not made a mistake at all. It had simply opened the right door in the most unexpected way. Winter arrived quietly, wrapping the city in silver mornings and soft breath on glass windows. Evelyn's exhibit had closed weeks ago, but its echo lingered in local magazines and small art blogs, a story of imperfection, honesty, and grace, one review called it. For her, though, it was not about the recognition. It was about having finally seen her world, her small, imperfect world, reflected back at her with meaning. She had not seen Liam since that night in the gallery. He had walked her home afterward, both of them too full of words they did not yet know how to speak. They had parted with a quiet promise to take time, to rebuild trust slowly, not as strangers who met by mistake, but as people who had chosen to stay. Now, she stood inside a small studio near the edge of downtown. The space smelled of fresh paint and morning light. On the glass door outside, hand-painted in neat lettering, were the words, "The Right Door Studio." The name made her smile every time she saw it. She was arranging brushes when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up, heart catching for no reason at all, and there he was. Liam stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and a small brown envelope. "I hope I am not interrupting the grand opening," he said, smiling softly. "You are actually right on time," she replied. "I was just about to paint the first stroke in my new space." He set the coffees on the table. "Then I brought the fuel for it." She studied him, no designer suit, no boardroom stiffness. Just Liam, the man who once got lost in a hallway and somehow found his way to her life. "How have you been?" she asked. "Better," he said honestly. "Less meetings, more thinking. Your art reminded me what silence feels like." He handed her the brown envelope. Inside was a photograph of the gallery from that night, her paintings glowing under soft light, and in the center, her standing beside him. On the back, he had written a single sentence: "Some doors are meant to be opened twice." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "You really have a thing for doors," she said with a shaky laugh. "They keep showing up," he replied. "Maybe because every time I see one, I think of the moment that changed my life." She set the photo down and took a step closer. "You know," she said softly, "for the longest time, I thought that night ruined everything." "And now?" he asked. She smiled. "Now I think it saved us both." Liam's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then let me ask properly this time." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple silver ring, shaped like a circle of light, no diamonds, no extravagance. "Evelyn Monroe," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Would you let me walk through the right door with you? For good?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Only if we promise never to lock it." Action. Action. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling just slightly. And in that quiet studio, surrounded by the scent of paint and hope, they kissed softly, not as an ending, but as the beginning of everything they had learned to believe in again. Outside, snow began to fall, gathering gently on the window ledge. Inside, the light from the street reflected off the glass door, turning the words "The Right Door Studio" into a shimmer of gold. Their laughter filled the space as they stood together, two people who had once collided by accident but now moved forward by choice. Fate had opened the wrong door once, but love, in its quiet, patient way, had made sure they walked through the right one at last.